Hey everybody, Captain Brian. We're here at Lake Barkley. We're going to go out and do a little worm fishing around some of the wood, stumps, brush piles, whatever out here, and see if we can catch some bass. It's first part of August, water's coming down, and it's kind of warm, a lot of humidity. It's not real, the temperature's not real hot, but man, the humidity's pretty stick out there. So we'll go out there and see what we can get done, get this boat in the water, and let's go see what we can catch. Alright, got the boat down here, we're ready to roll. Go out here and see what we can find out here on the lake. Like I said, it's first part of June or first part of August, and you know, we're in those dog days of summer. Fish are kind of spread out. They're no longer in the big schools and stuff that they used to be. So we're going to come out here and just try to pick away at some of these fish that maybe moved up on the flats around some of the stumps, and then we'll also fish some of the brush piles that are on the flats and some that are down on the drops. And it just seems like wood this time of year seems to be kind of the key deal here on Kentucky or Barkley. Find a stump or something out on a ledge, it really seems to be a pretty good deal. We got a stump flat out here. It's got a bunch of stumps in about 5 foot of water. Got some current in the lake, so it should set those fish up right behind those stumps, and then we'll check some of the deeper brush piles out there. And what we're going to do today, we're going to fish basic Texas rig worm. I got a 10-inch big bite baits B2 worm. This one happens to be plum apple. Got a 4/0 hook. I've got this little parasite clip. I'll show you later on exactly how that works, but boy, that thing really helps in your worm fishing. Hold that worm up. My half ounce tungsten weight from Bag 5 Baits. Awesome tungsten. And then what I've done is I've pegged it about a foot and a half up from where the sinker is. And what I want it to do is be able to let that bait slide, just like I'm regular Texas rigging out on a ledge. But I don't want it to totally free fall. When I get up in that brush or around a stump and I pull that worm up, I want the weight to kind of pull off to the side and let that worm stay up there. But I don't want, if I'm in that deeper water or in a brush pile, I don't want the weight to go all the way to the bottom and then that worm's way up here yet. So that's why I peg it so it's only about a foot or so. That way the weight still gets away from the worm, gives it a little bit of free motion. You can sit there and shake it a little bit and trigger some extra bites. But let's get out there and see what we can get. Alright guys, this first area that we're fishing, just a big shallow flat up here. It's got a bunch of stumps on it. And when the water's lower, they've kind of got them marked a little better to see them. Today we're just going to be able to kind of fan cast this area and just try to work our worm up over it. Again, said I'm going to be throwing that 10-inch worm on a half-ounce weight, and don't really need that big of a weight here, throwing around these stumps, being as shallow as it is, but I've got it for like when I'm fishing the deeper brush piles and stuff too. So, but all we're trying to do here is just make contact with that stump, kind of keep it around it, shake it a little bit. What'll happen is a lot of bait fish get up on these flats, and they're looking for something to hide around them too. And you'll get a big ball of them just around these stumps, and those bass, they'll just sit on the back side of it, especially if we get a little current. And they'll let the current wash those bait balls by them, and of course a lot of it when we don't have a lot of current, they just hover right around that thing, and the bass can just use that stump, sit at the base of it, and whenever he's hungry he comes up and takes a swipe and gets a mouthful. There's one. I got hung on the, oh, and he come off. Dang it, I had it hung on that stump. I felt like one bit it. I shook it to get it off, and he came up and ate it. Boy, there's some good roots. Good root system down there. Doesn't feel like there's a whole lot of current. I don't see, a lot of times on these stumps, even if you can't see them, you'll see right above them or around them a little eddy, or just kind of like you would on a buoy marker, just a little eddy, a little current break behind them. And the boat's not moving a whole lot either. I thought there'd be a little more current up here with what they're pulling. I can see quite a few of the bait fish balled up swimming around out here, so the bait fish are here, and that's the biggest key. Is if you don't have bait, you're not going to have bass. Some of these areas too, late in the day or early in the day, you can wind up throwing come in here and throw a topwater bait, a little popper or a little walking bait across some of these spots too, and catch them. Hung up on the same spot again. Try to just go around the outside. It's just a little hump of them right out here on the tip of this flat. I'm just going to try to stay around the outside of them rather than cutting through the middle and stirring things up with the boat. This water's shallow enough here. It's just going to be pretty much just a slow drag. If this stuff was a little deeper water, if this water was a little bit deeper, I'd maybe hop that worm a little bit more. But as shallow as these fish are, we're only fishing 4 foot of water. No sense trying to hop it. You're bringing it almost up out of the water column before when you're hopping it. So the shallower they are, I just tend to drag it a little, just drag it more than I hop anything. I do see on this one post we do got some current up here, so that'd be good. I'll try to hopefully position those fish a little better. When you don't have any current, that's the hard part, man. Those fish can get up and just suspend and be kind of wherever they want. And equipment, I use for trying to do this. It's usually a 7 foot, 7.3, 7'4" rod, medium heavy, fast, extra fast tip. Just your normal worm rod that you'd throw out on, ledge fishing. 16 pound, anywhere 14 or 16 pound sniper fluorocarbon's what I use, but definitely some sort of fluorocarbon line. And a fast gear ratio reel, 7 to 1 up to 8 to 1. Because once you're done and you're past your stump, I just want to get it back in and throw it, because the rest of the area is just going to be really dead water. I mean, the fish are here because they're hanging on the stump, but once you fish past that stump, you just want to get that, you want to get that bait back in and get it back out there as soon as you can. I'm throwing a Texas rig today. You can throw a shaky head out here if you want to do. Even a Carolina rig if you want to throw even a little bigger weight and drag it a whole lot faster and try to keep better contact with the bottom. But as shallow as this is here, I'm not really too worried about it. Now, if I'm throwing around a brush pile, I'm not big on throwing a Carolina rig. Shaky head will work in some brush piles, but if you get a real thick one, man, this Texas rig's the best way to go. Right there's another stump. and get that line caught on it, and I kind of just want to shake that worm there a little bit, especially if I can get that sinker to come up over and drop, and you can kind of tell that worm's still hanging on a little bit. Boy, you can get a lot of bites that way. It looks like that. Give that worm a little extra free action without that weight being down there by it. See if I can hit that one again. And not all these stump flats are going to hold fish all year long. It seems like this one here, late summer through the early fall, seems to be the best time. Some of the brush piles in a little deeper water, that 8 to 12 foot, they'll hold fish right after the spawn, and they'll hold fish again as they transition back into the shallow water for fall fishing. You get some of the real deep brush piles, 15, 20, 30 foot, those will hold fish, late summer when they come off late spring after the spawn. Fish bail out in that deep water and recuperating. That's always a good spot to find them too. Feel that stump down there right now. What I'm trying to do is just shake it around the side of it, either get it to come all the way up over it, or shake it enough that it kind of works its way around the side of it. And if I can get an idea where it's at, try to fish both sides of it. Sometimes those fish in the current, they'll get stuck on doing one thing and they want that bait to come around there a certain way. And just like flipping at a laydown, you want to flip both sides of that laydown. Same thing with a stump. You want to hit both sides of it. And it's hard for me. It's hard for a lot of people, but I'll tell you what. Don't be afraid to cast at. Don't be afraid to cast at a stump 3, 4, 5 times. I've seen it more than once, and again, it's hard for me to do it, but don't be afraid to throw it up there, because too many times I've seen where I flipped at a stump, and no bite, no bite, no bite. I move on. The guy behind me throws he's pitching the same bait as I am, but had I pitched it in there, that 4th or 5th time, that would have been the key in getting that extra bite. Sometimes you just got to aggravate them enough to bite. I can't emphasize how important it is to try to keep that bait. Once you hit a stump like I just did up there, just don't keep feeling your way across it right away. Once you bump into it and you can tell you're up against something, just leave that bait there. Just kill it and just let it sit there. A lot of times if there's current in the water like we've got here, it'll pick that tail up and move that tail, and you don't have to do anything with the bait at all. If you don't have any current, or maybe just using a straight tail worm, we're using a ribbon tail right now today, just get it up against it and just take your rod tip and just shake it, just like a shaky head or something. Just shake it in place right there against the side of that stump. And there's There's no fish that can resist it. If there's a fish there, he's going to eat it. But just don't pull up against it, and then, you know, keep on working it and pull it right on by it. Your odds of getting bit are just keep getting slimmer all the time that way. So throw it up there. You know, I can't see this stump. This one isn't marked right now, but I knew I pulled up against it. You know, I'm pulling across that bottom. I can feel the bottom. We've got some gravel and shell down here. And all of a sudden, boom, it just pulls up against it and just wants to stop. I just take it and shake it there. And I can feel the line, too, that it's coming over something. It's not just going over shell and stop. And I can feel that it's bumped up against it. You can feel it on line like you're pulling across it. And just get that rod there and just shake that thing right in place. One did popping that worm up off of that root system down there. I can see where this stump here, this one here's got a little bit of a marker in it, so somebody doesn't hit it with a boat. It's got a heck of a root system. It sticks off the side of it. You get it down on those roots, you can feel it going down through there. Every now and again, if they hit the right one, and just kind of gets hung in there. A lot of times you snap that thing up out of there, it pops out, and that'll trigger that fish to come out and eat it too. I missed that fish, and he tore my worm off. Normally that isn't what will happen on here, so let me show you what this parasite clip does. He ripped a little bit of my worm, bite a little bit of it off. So what you do is when you get your worm hooked on here and you get it up around the throat, the S-bend of that hook, and you got it on, and normally you're going to just go and Texas rig your worm. What you want to do is take this parasite clip, and what it does is the line runs through it just like that, and then what you do is you take the hook, get yourself enough slack, take the hook and wrap it through, wrap it through that loop, and it comes up and around on the back side. And what it does is it holds that worm from sliding down off that hook. Now what happened there, that fish had enough of it that it wound up, and then you're just Texas rigging this again like normal, you know, just making sure everything's nice and straight. What happened that time is that actually the fish had enough of it that it pulled and cut the worm. But normally what this will help keep from happening is when you get that bite and the fish grabs it back here and pulls on the worm and pulls it down and balls it all up, I can miss a fish and then throw right back in there and get that bite because this won't let it slide down. Now obviously if it tears off it's another deal, but let's get back out there. Well, we're going to move around. We'll check out another point that's got a bunch of stumps on it. See what happens there. That's fishing. They're not going to bite everywhere. Always switch spots here. We've got now is another shallow flat up here, but we got a lot bigger drop off. We're kind of somewhat ledge fishing. But what we're doing is fishing, there's a bunch of stumps, a couple brush piles on here. Crappie guys have put out. as much as the ledge can be good too, it makes it that much better right now with this wood being on it. But here what we're doing, we're keeping the boat out here in 16 foot of water. We're thrown up on top where it's 6 foot of water. Once I get that bait out where I can start feeling it fall, that's when I reel it back in. I'm not actually fishing down on the deeper side of it. I'm trying to keep, all my bites should come from up on top if the fish are there. Tell you, you're just dragging across that bottom, you can feel the gravel, the shell, and all of a sudden that thing will just, it'll, your shaky head or your Texas rig like this, it'll just bump and just, you almost feel it before you get there. Your line will kind of feel like it's starting to drag on something, and all of a sudden that sinker will just, your weight, whatever, the shaky head will just slide right up against it and just stop. Normally dog days of summer, a lot of lakes will stratify. You'll wind up with your thermocline layer. And the fish don't have any oxygen below it. So to create those fish that were out real deep, they got to come up and they'll suspend. Some of the fish that are shallow, they'll actually move back and get back in the bays. And they won't be by schools. They'll just be you know, single fish on a log here or there. You know, like these stumps, you just get a little fish here or there. I don't generally look to pull up on one of these things and, you know, whack, whack, whack. You're going to get into a school of fish like you would in June. But come up here and yeah, you're going to catch a couple. Should get a couple, 3, 4 fish. You know, if you got a big enough area and, you know, got enough stumps are covered down there for them to hold on. A lot of times this time of year for tournaments too, it's a run and gun deal. I mean, you kind of got to slow down and fish. Your spot's a lot more thorough, but it's, you know, you're going to get your 1 or 2 fish and then boom, get up and get going to the next spot. You're not going to sit there and just, you know, catch 50 fish off a spot. Oh, well, that must have been a carp that swam through it there. That line jumped, you could feel it go through, but definitely wasn't a fish that had a hold of the bait. Fell right off a limb. That fell right off a limb and he came out and got it. Definitely not a giant. The hook just fell right off too. I was shaking that, got it up against that limb and it fell off and it just felt like it hit something as it was falling, but that was the fish biting it as it fell off. And that'll happen a lot of times. That's why I like to have that. That's why I like to have that thing pegged, because you'll pull it up and the weight will fall over, and you can shake it on that limb. And as soon as you pop it up over that limb and this starts falling, it's going to fall slower than if that weight is right up against it and dropping it. And a lot of times that's what it takes to just trigger that fish into eating. Biggest thing is not trying to bull your way through those brush piles. I mean, you want to pick it up, stump or a brush pile. You just want to pick it up and kind of feather it through there, just almost like act like you got treble hooks down there rather than just a single hook Texas rig. And you just, I mean, you want to pick it up, feel for every branch, every twig. feel your way around the root system, and just, as slow as you can, kind of work your way through that, because you just never know. I mean, those fish are lethargic right now. They will eat, but they're lethargic. They want that thing to hit them right in the nose, and you just got to work it through there slow and as you possibly can. Shake it off each limb, and let this is right there. There's a little better fish. In here, buddy. There we go. Now there's a beautiful summertime fish. Right there. There's a nice solid 3.5. That fish might even push 4 pounds. Boy, look at the belly on it. It's been down there eating all nice. Good, solid, healthy green fish. There we go. That's what we're looking for. Beautiful fish. Again, I was just working it as slow as I can through that brush pile, and just, how many casts have we made in there? That just shows you summertime fishing, this worm fish, you just got to be patient. Just feel your way through that whole brush pile, limb, whatever's laying down there. With a stump, just try to work it up every inch of it and down it. And definitely can't. You're definitely not trying to hurry the cast, like if you're throwing a crankbait, throwing a swim bait or something out there. It's you can hurry up and get it back once you're past what you're fishing, but before that, you just want to let that worm soak or jig or whatever it might be that you're fishing on this stuff, and just let it absolutely soak in those around it. Switch spots one more time. Fishing another, got another hump here with a bunch of brush that's off the side of it. Again, I think it's more stuff that crappie guys put out, but same spot the bass will hide in the summertime too. Alright guys, I'm going to show you on here what we're fishing on this brush pile and why it's so important to work it so hard or work it so slow. Here's the main trunk of the brush right there, but you can see how high this thing comes off the bottom. And so when you're in there and you're working that worm down here, you're going to be catching some of this brush, and you're going to want to be bringing it up and through and drop it. You can bring it back up through and drop it. You might hit this first limb and only be, like down here, be a foot off the bottom. The next limb you might hit might be this one up here coming off. That's 5-6 feet off the bottom. So that's the biggest reason when it comes to fishing these things, why you got to fish them so slow, is the fact that when you're fishing them, especially brush pile deep, you just don't know if like I said, if that limb's on the very, very bottom, and you're picking it up and you can drop it right away and it's right there, or if you're picking it, then dunk, you kind of feel it hit that limb and you shake it and then let it fall, that it's 4 or 5 feet off the bottom, you got to let it fall back down. If you just hold it there, work it over and hold your rod straight up, and that bait pendulum's back to you, you're missing that fish that's right under that limb or laying right down there on the bottom. So you definitely want to, again, just pick it up as slow as you can, let it fall back down to the bottom, pick it back up slow, work it across everything and back down. And by that example, looking at how far those brush piles come off the bottom, that's the reason you got to fish them slow. Again, today we're just, we're Texas rigging most of these fish. on a Texas rig, 10-inch big bite worm, ribbon tail. You can definitely go through some of these stuff that's maybe a little less sparse, and throw a shaky head through there instead. I just tend to like that Texas rig. It just seems to come through so much better. I can peg that weight up so far, so it kind of gives it that free range of motion. But there are some days that's what they'll prefer, is having a shaky head down there and having that worm kind of stand up as it's working. Because you know, like most of the time when you're working that Texas rig, it's kind of just pretty much going flat there across the bottom. That tail's got some action to it, but for the most part, that worm's just, you know, staying pretty much straight across the bottom unless you hop it or something yourself. Like I said earlier, when we were fishing those stumps, you just don't have enough. I mean, there's really not enough water there to be, you know, hopping a bait. And out in these brush piles, yeah, you certainly can. You can give it a hop, get that worm kind of jumping up off the bottom a little bit. It's kind of where that shaky head will come in too, is when you throw it up there and drag it through there. That shaky head will tip that worm up, put it in a defensive mode. It seems like a small deal, but I've seen it time and time again where that just having that different way that worm comes through. There's especially on ledges, really seen it on ledges where you'd be throwing that big worm out there, big Texas rig, and get a bite here and there, and have the guy in the boat, back of the boat, just waxing you. And the only thing different he's doing is throwing that shaky head, and it kicks that worm a little bit more. And not every one of these brush piles, not every spot you stop. You know, we had a couple little bites, up on the first spot we stopped, but not every brush pile, not every stump's going to have a fish on it. You know, it's a slow presentation. You're not going to cover a lot of water in a day. You want to have your stuff marked. You know, the best way to fish fast is have your brush piles marked, or you know, use your graph, go over them and throw a marker out so you know where each one is, so you're not having to blind cast. But you know, you're going to fish slow in that brush pile, but once you're out of it, get the worm right back out and cast again. It's not like a ledge, you know, where you're fishing a big area. You're fishing a specific piece of cover, and once you're through it, just like that. I mean, I felt it come through there. I pulled it out of a little bit and just reel it back in and fire another cast back out on it. I mean, that's where the fish are going to be. And I'm not looking for a bunch of fish. It's not a thing where you're going to go out and catch, you know, pull up the brush pile and catch 15, 20, 30 out of one spot. You know, you're going to pull up and, you know, hope to get a bite. And if you get real lucky, you might catch a couple, 3 out of that brush pile. And it doesn't mean that you can't cycle through them throughout the day. You know, have yourself, you know, an area of the lake and get yourself some brush piles picked out and start on one, make your little loop, come back and hit that one again before you know, end the day, or you know, fish through them for 4 hours and then turn around and start back over and you know, fish through them again. Because there are times, especially, you know, if these brush piles, these deeper ones, are on a ledge type area, they will they'll reload. You know, there's still fish cruising the edge and fish that want to be on there, and maybe the biggest fish is on there right now. A lot of times, if that big fish is on there, it's calling it home. It ain't letting anybody else come in there with it. And you catch that big one out of there, and you know, you might not get another big one on it right away, but you might get a couple more fish that'll pull up on it. That brush pile fishing, it's just all about slow and steady, soaking that worm, hitting every inch of it that you can. Making sure that bait falls straight back down to the bottom. And you'll definitely pick up a few more summertime fish by fishing around some of this woody structure. And again, it's just like anything, you know, there's some days it's way better than others. You just kind of got to fish each one. You know, start shallow like we did, check some stumps, check some shallow stuff. If they're not on that, you know, move your way back out and check some of the deeper stuff. And you'll get, you know, you'll find after a while you get a bite here or there. Maybe you don't catch that fish, but you'll start getting a bite here or there, and you'll be able to kind of put a little bit of a pattern together as to what depth of water you should be keying in on. Because I mean, there's brush piles in a lot of the lakes that are anywhere from the deepest part, you know, whatever it might be, you know, say it's 20, 30, 40 feet, and there's going to be stuff in between, and that, you know, that 8 to 14, 15 foot stuff, and, you know, there's always stuff up shallow, you know, whether it be up on the bank or whether it be, you know, some flats like we're fishing this morning. A lot of that stuff just can be found just idling around using your side imaging, even just your regular 2D sonar. Idling across that flat, you see that little bump coming up there off the bottom. Turn around, throw a couple times at it, and see what it feels like. Is it just solid like a stump would be, or maybe it looks bigger on the graph, and more than likely has a brush pile down there. All right, we're gonna wrap it up for today. Anyhow, we hopefully taught you a little something on fishing some plastics around brush piles, woody structure, stumps. Again, we're in dog days of summer. We're not catching fish like it's June, catching 100 and having them just jump in the boat. You're having to work for them, and especially on these brush piles and stuff, you just got to work slow and take your time through it. But you'll definitely catch some more fish. So get yourself a 10-inch worm, get yourself some slip sinkers and some good sharp hooks, some Gamakatsu hooks, and get out there. And just because it's hot and sweaty, man, doesn't mean that the fish won't bite. So get out there, enjoy the day. This is Captain Brian with FishingHype.com, Fishing Hype Guide Service, and look forward to seeing you guys on the water. Tight lines.